You ever notice how the excitement of buying something almost never survives the trip home? You see it, you want it, you buy it. For about an hour, maybe a day, you feel taller. Then the new thing becomes a normal thing. The normal thing becomes invisible, and the itch comes back louder than before. So you scratch it again. New shoes, new phone, new couch you didn't really need for the apartment you're already paying too much for. Now picture that one person you know who earns more every single year and somehow always seems broke. Nice car, nice watch, nice nothing in the bank. They're not stupid. They're not reckless, exactly. They've just been handed a story so early and so completely that they never once thought to question it. The story goes like this. Happiness is one purchase away. I want to tell you about a guy named Ethan, because Ethan believed that story with his whole heart. And I want to tell you about the thing that finally broke it. It wasn't a budgeting app. It wasn't a spreadsheet. It was a handful of old Japanese ideas that, stacked together, do something almost no self-help book manages to pull off. They make you want less, not through guilt, through relief. The Japanese have a kind of freedom formula for this, and it runs backward from everything you've been taught. You've been told the road to peace is addition. Get more, become more, own more. The formula says the opposite. The road is subtraction. By the end of this, I think you'll see exactly why. Before we get into it, quick thing. If you've ever bought something to fix a bad mood and regretted it by the weekend, drop a comment and tell me what it was. I actually read them. And hit subscribe, because this whole channel is basically one long argument that the good life is a lot cheaper than they told you. All right, let's meet Ethan. Ethan was 28 and, on paper, winning. Marketing manager at a company you've heard of. A salary that made his parents brag to the neighbors. From the outside, the guy had clearly made it. Step inside his apartment, and the story got a little stranger. There were 3 espresso machines lined up on the counter. Ethan drank instant coffee, usually out of a chipped mug he'd gotten free from a bank. His closet was so full the door wouldn't shut, and a solid third of what was inside still had the tags on. He owned a guitar he couldn't play, a bread maker he'd used exactly once, and a drone that had flown twice before quietly retiring into a box. He was renting a 1-bedroom big enough for 2 people, and most of that second person's worth of space was occupied by things he was keeping, so he'd have somewhere to put the next things. And he was $30,000 in debt. Not mortgage debt, not student debt, stuff debt. The slow, invisible kind that arrives one perfectly reasonable purchase at a time. A watch here, a weekend there, a gadget he was sure he'd use. Here's the part that would have scared him if he'd ever let himself look at it. Ethan was not happy. He'd get a little hit of warmth at checkout, a flare of, I'm the kind of person who has this now. And then, every single time, the flare would burn out and leave him a shade emptier than before, standing in a stuffed apartment, feeling like something was missing. So he'd do the only thing he knew how to do about the feeling of missing something. He'd go get something. He was sprinting as hard as he could on a wheel that only ever turned in place. Reality has a way of knocking when you're least ready for it. For Ethan, it knocked on a Tuesday, and it did not knock softly. His company restructured. Ethan's whole team got the meeting nobody wants, the one with HR and a folder. Severance, a handshake, a cardboard box for his desk plants. By lunch, he was unemployed for the first time in 6 years. He wasn't too worried at first. He'd been earning well for a long time. Surely there was a cushion under all this. There wasn't. He sat down that night and actually ran the numbers, something he'd been avoiding the way you avoid a strange noise in your car. 6 years of a strong salary. And when he added up what he could genuinely live on, the money that wasn't already owed to somebody else, the total came to about 3 weeks. 3 weeks of runway out of 6 years of good money. All the rest had turned into stuff, so he tried to turn the stuff back into money. That's when the second punch landed. The watch he'd paid $1,200 for got him an offer of $80. The barely touched drone, $40. The designer jacket, the one that made him feel like somebody the day he bought it, sold for less than the lunch he'd worn it to. One item at a time, the world told him the truth about his treasures. They weren't assets, they'd been costumes, and the resale value of a costume is close to nothing once the show is over. He sat on his floor, surrounded by a museum of things he couldn't sell and couldn't afford, and had the clearest thought he'd had in years. I don't own any of this. It owns me. With rent suddenly terrifying, Ethan crashed for a couple of weeks on a friend's couch. The friend was a guy named Kenji, who'd spent most of his 20s living and working in Japan, and had come back, in Ethan's private opinion, slightly weird. The apartment was the weird part. It was almost empty. A low table, a couple of cushions, one good knife in the kitchen, books on a shelf with actual gaps between them, like the books were allowed to breathe. Ethan kept waiting to find the hidden room, the closet bursting with the real truth about how much Kenji owned. There wasn't one. This was it. And here's what bothered Ethan. Sitting on that couch, the empty apartment felt better than his full one. Calmer. Somehow bigger, even though it was smaller. He could not work out why a place with nothing in it dropped his shoulders 3 inches the second he walked through the door. You keep looking around like you lost something, Kenji said, handing him a tea he hadn't asked for. Where's all your stuff? Kenji shrugged. Got rid of the stuff that was in the way of my life. He said it the way you'd mention the weather. There's kind of a formula for it, if you want it. Fair warning, though. It's the opposite of what you're hoping. You want a way to feel better about buying more. This is a way to stop needing to. Ethan, who had $30,000 of reasons to listen, said okay. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The first idea Kenji handed him had a name that sounded like a martial art. Danshari. It breaks into 3 moves. Refuse what you don't need before it comes through the door. Get rid of what's already piled up inside. Loosen the grip, the itch to own things for the sake of owning them. Kenji made him start small. 1 drawer. Ethan opened it and found the archaeology of a man who buys things. Dead batteries, 3 charging cables for phones he no longer owned. A single lonely chopstick. He kept 4 items. The rest went in the trash. It took 9 minutes, and when he slid that one clean drawer shut, he felt a small flicker of the exact feeling he used to chase at the checkout counter. Except he hadn't spent a cent. He'd earned it by taking away, not adding. The reason most people can't stop buying, Kenji said, isn't broken willpower. It's that they've never defined the finish line. If more is always better, no amount is ever enough. The word for this is chisoku, knowing enough. Kenji told him about a stone basin at a temple in Kyoto, carved with characters that read, roughly, I already have all I need. People fly across the planet to crouch down and read a rock that tells them to want less. Ethan thought about his 3 espresso machines and the fact that a human being drinks 1 coffee at a time. Enough had been sitting inside his apartment the whole time. So he tried a new question, not, what do I want next, which never ran out of answers, but, what do I already have that does this job? It saved him more money in 1 month than any budget ever had. As Ethan cleared things out, something showed up in his apartment that he hadn't paid for. Space, open floor, a bare wall. His first instinct, trained by a lifetime of advertising, was that empty space is a problem to solve. Kenji had a word that turned this over. The meaningful gap between things. The silence between 2 notes is what makes it music instead of noise. Cram every inch full, and nothing has room to matter. Ethan started leaving the empty parts of his apartment empty on purpose, and the things he'd kept, the good knife, the 1 comfortable chair, began to feel like more, not less. When a shelf holds 40 books, No single book is anything. When it holds 6, each one is a friend with a name. Then Ethan hit a snag common to anyone who discovers minimalism. He got smug about it and caught himself wanting to throw everything out and buy new, better minimalist things. Kenji spotted it fast. "You're about to spend money to look like you don't spend money," he said. That's not it. The missing word was motenai, a feeling deeper than, "what a waste," a kind of respect for the labor and materials that went into making a thing. It changed how Ethan treated his own belongings. He stopped seeing them as disposable and started seeing them as owed something. The jacket with the loose button didn't need replacing. It needed a button. The scuffed boots needed 10 minutes and some polish, and then they were his boots, broken in and loyal, instead of one more thing on a shelf at the store. Buy less. Take care of what you keep. It sounds almost too obvious to say out loud. It also happens to be how people lived for most of history, right up until someone figured out they could sell you the same thing twice. By now, Ethan owned a fraction of what he used to, and he noticed his taste had shifted underneath him without his say-so. He no longer wanted the newest, glossiest, most flawless version of everything. He was starting to want the opposite. This was the last idea Kenji gave him, and it's the deepest one. Wabi-sabi. Beauty in the imperfect, the worn, the impermanent. It's the crack in the old mug. The uneven grain of a wooden table. The way a leather bag gets better as it ages, instead of worse. Advertising sells you a fantasy, where everything is flawless, brand new, and endlessly upgradable. Wabi-sabi says flawless is cold, that new is empty, and that the marks time leaves on a thing aren't damage. They're the thing becoming real. Ethan realized the objects he actually loved, out of everything he'd ever bought, were all the imperfect ones. The chipped bowl from his grandmother, the paperback read so many times it was falling apart. None of them were expensive. All of them were impossible to replace. And meanwhile, the flawless, costly things had never meant a thing to him, because an object with no history is just a product, and you can always go buy another product. Once you stop needing everything to be perfect and new, an enormous slice of your spending simply evaporates. You've been paying a premium your whole life for the one quality objects lose the very moment you get them home. I'd love to tell you Ethan changed once and stayed changed forever. That's not how any actual human works. He got a new job, a better one, and with the first couple of good paychecks, the old wiring lit right back up. He walked past a shop window, saw an enormous television, and heard the familiar little voice. "You've earned this. You've been so disciplined lately. Treat yourself." He bought the television. He got it home, mounted it on his nice empty wall, switched it on, and felt the old flare of joy, right on schedule. And then, right on schedule, he felt it fade. Within a week, the giant TV was just the wall now, invisible, ordinary, and the itch was already creeping back for whatever came after it. But this time he caught it. He recognized the entire machine while it was still running. And he asked himself the Kyoto Stone's question, "Do I have enough?" He looked around a calm apartment he could finally afford to actually live in, at a life that had stopped owning him, and the answer was not complicated. He returned the television. Progress isn't a straight line. It's more like a spiral. You circle back past the same old temptations, but if you're paying attention, you meet them at a higher level than before. Falling once doesn't erase what you learned. It just hands you a chance to prove you learned it. Ethan is 31 now. He owns a fraction of what he used to. His apartment has bare walls, open floor, and a short list of things he genuinely loves. He cleared $30,000 of debt about a year and a half ago, and for the first time in his adult life, there's money in the bank that isn't already spoken for. He took a trip last spring, a real one, paid for in cash, and it was worth more than every object he'd ever bought, because you can't return a memory for $80. He's not a monk. He still buys things. He still likes nice stuff. The difference is that he chooses it now, on purpose. instead of getting dragged around by a feeling he'd mistaken for a need. He owns his things. They don't own him. A coworker asked him recently how he stays so calm while everyone else is drowning, how he saved for that trip on a normal salary. Ethan gave her the same answer Kenji gave him on that couch. It's not discipline. It's not income. It's knowing what's enough and having the nerve to actually stop there. So here's the whole formula in one place. Danshari, the letting go. Refuse what you don't need. Clear out what's piled up. Loosen your grip on owning for its own sake. Chisoku, knowing enough. Draw the finish line. Because a want with no finish line runs you into the ground. Ma, the empty space. Quit treating emptiness as a defect, since the gap is where good things get room to matter. Motainai, honoring what you have. Buy less. Respect what you keep. Repair before you replace. And wabi-sabi, the beauty in the imperfect. Fall for the worn and the real, and watch most of your spending disappear, along with your need for everything to look flawless. None of this asks you to become poor. It asks you to stop confusing a full apartment with a full life. You give up the endless chase, the wheels spinning in place, and get back the one thing all that stuff was pretending to sell you and never delivered. Peace, room to breathe. The stillness the Japanese call seijaku, which is famously hard to buy, mostly because it was never for sale. Here's what I want you to do, small enough that you have zero excuse. Today, find one thing you own that you'd honestly be lighter without. Just one. Let it go, donate it, sell it, hand it to a friend, and notice the flicker you feel when the space opens up. That flicker is free, and you can have it as many times as you like. Tomorrow, before you buy the next thing, ask the question carved on that stone in Kyoto. Do I already have enough? Sit with the answer for one full second before you reach for your wallet. Time is going to pass either way. 3 years from now, you'll be standing somewhere, either on a bigger pile, still one purchase away from a happiness that keeps sliding out of reach, or looking around a life with actual room in it, realizing you've had everything you needed the whole time. That's our story. If you enjoyed it, hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell. And tomorrow, more stories are waiting for you. Thanks for watching.